This is West Philadelphia, where Wilt Chamberlain grew up. This is the house that Wilt grew up in. I personally remember we would finish playing basketball, then we would come past the house. If you came in, you had lemonade, you had cookies. Wilt wasn't really somebody that we thought of as special. We thought of Wilt as just somebody who was a part of all of us.
They called Sonny Hill Mr. Basketball in Philadelphia. He and Wilt met on these streets when they were kids.
The legendary one-of-a-kind Wilt Chamberlain played right here at Overbrook High School. Wilt would not only block your shot, Wilt could go up in the air and catch your shot, which was like, ooh. He was changing how basketball games were played in the mid-50s.
He was just a teenager, but he was already a huge star and the most popular kid at Overbrook High.
The whole aura of Wilt Chamberlain permeated the whole school. Everybody was excited about the possibility that we were going to have the greatest basketball player in history. It's impossible to describe. There was no way of stopping him. In our gym, he could run the length of the gym in 4 or 5 steps and dunk the ball. He scored 90 points in 28 minutes in the high school game, and he had 15 points in 1 minute. Every time you opened up the paper, you would read something about Wilt Chamberlain.
Wilt's toughest competition back then came in the summers, when he worked at the famous Kutcher's Resort in the Catskill Mountains.
I started playing against pros back when I was in high school. Up at Kutcher's, Red Auerbach was coaching me. He had me go against some of his Boston Celtics boys, and I used to like to try to beat him to death.
And when he wasn't schooling the pros, he was the world's greatest bellhop.
He could hand the bags up to the second floor, and that would mean they wouldn't have to walk those bags up the steps, which was legendary back in the day.
The legend grew at the University of Kansas, where Wilt was a conference champion in the high jump and played a little basketball too.
Coach Bog Allen calls Chamberlain already one of the greatest players I've ever seen.
In his very first varsity game, Wilt scored 52 points, and that's still a school record.
The other coaches around the country said, if we're going to play Kansas and we're going to play Wilt Chamberlain, we're going to have to find out some way to stop this guy from scoring points.
Record sellout throngs turned out to watch the widely heralded Chamberlain.
So they would put 4 guys around me on defense, and then when they got the ball, they would hold it.
But even with them holding the ball, a lot of our games being 45 to 50 points, I was still averaging 30 points a game. But I didn't care about the average as much as I want to get out there and play. I want to run and do the things that I thought basketball players were supposed to do.
So after his junior year, he left Kansas and joined the most famous team in the world, the Harlem Globetrotters.
The Globetrotters would play some games before Warrior games in Philadelphia. Globetrotters would play the first game, full house. When they finished playing, the arena would empty out, and then the Warriors would play.
The Trotters are a team of basketball wizards featuring one of the most talked about players in years, 7-foot Wilt Chamberlain.
When you're a kid, I mean, a black kid of that, the Harlem Globetrotters are like heaven. If it wasn't for the challenge of just playing with the best players in the world, I would probably never left the Globetrotters.
He was a Trotter for a year, and then in 1959, he joined the NBA, returning to Philly to play for the Warriors.
I think there will be a period of orientation for me, of course, like it is for every newcomer in the NBA, but I think in the long run I'll be able to handle myself man-to-man with almost anyone in the league.
It was a different league back then, featuring a different style of basketball. Wilt changed all that very quickly.
It was a slow-motion, slow dance game. Most of the guys in the league couldn't dunk, and here comes this phenomenon showing everybody what the future is.
Chamberlain electrifies the crowd with his celebrated dipper dunk.
No athlete in a team sport has ever brought the elements of size, strength, and speed into a league as the young Wilt Chamberlain brought into the NBA in 1959.
Chamberlain with the rebound, put! Russell had a hand on the ball, but Chamberlain forced it through.
Stylistically, he was unprecedented. There was nobody who was like Wilt. You know, this was the first real athlete, 7 feet and above.
He changed the concept of the game from being played on the floor to being played above the basket. Period. End of report.
As a rookie, he won the MVP and led the league in scoring and rebounding.
As Chamberlain underneath, and he dunks it.
But that was just the start of his impact.
There were a lot of black players that played at a really great level, and somehow they could not get in the league. So clearly it had to be color, because it couldn't be skills. The fact that most of the teams had only 1 or 2 black players on it began to change, and it changed because of certainly the gifts and the skills of Wilt.
He was blessed with his height and his athleticism, but there's also awareness, intelligence, and confidence.
I came into a game that was very limited to having black players. It was so limited that the only real black player of any high white-collar job, so to speak, meaning scoring points, was Elgin Baylor. Every other black player ever was in the league was a blue-collar worker. He was a guy who was getting rebounds for his team and passing it out to the other scorers and so forth. Then along comes me, and I don't care about giving the ball to somebody else. I'm gonna do it myself.
When Wilt showed up, now a lot of people looked at it as a great black athlete, gained the attention of the sports world, and was great doing it and didn't have to apologize for what he was doing. When he did that, you know, that spoke volume for everybody who ever played basketball.
He was not going to allow race in any way to define him or to diminish him. And so there he was making $75,000 a year, more than any other player in the NBA in 1961. And night after night, he's playing against the best white players in the league, and he's tearing it up.
Now, anybody who knew Wilt knows he wasn't just about basketball, just as Carl Green, Seth Sanders, and Cal Ramsey. They remember when Wilt came to Harlem and took over Small's Paradise, making it, of course, the center of the party.
Now, I have to tell you, Dionne Warwick was up, and Wilt was posing on the bar, and I remember her trying to decide who was the best looking of the 3 of us. And I remember Dionne Warwick picking Cal Ramsey, and Wilt just shook his head. He just couldn't believe it, that she would even consider us 2 in his company.
You know what I enjoyed about the club, though, was the entertainment.
Yeah.
I mean, and every weekend they had a great entertainment, and the place would be packed.
The other part about that was because it was Chamberlain, because it was Wilt's spot, a lot of entertainers wanted to be there. Yeah, they wanted to be in the spot where things were happening. There was no question that he was a magnet, because everybody enjoyed being in the company, particularly in his place.
Yeah.
No problem walking through there and touching all the folks at the table, shaking hands, and et cetera. And he was the perfect host in terms of getting around.
I can recall seeing Elgin there, seeing Oscar Robertson there. All the great ball players in the Eastern area would always come up to hang up there.
He was in love with New York.
Yeah,
and that's one of the reasons why he established New York as his base.
That's right. Wilt played in Philly, but he lived in the only city big enough for him, New York.
That's amazing to me, that you could get up and drive every morning to Philly to practice, and then come back to New York.
With limited amount of speed tickets, too, you know?